The Checkbook is the 16th episode of the second season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by John Fortenberry. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episodes and share some thoughts. And I really like this episode. I think it works really well as a narrative. I think Ray's performance as a character, the way he's lying a lot and kind of getting away with it, is pretty impressive. But I'll talk more about that in a moment. It starts with Debra in the kitchen sorting out a checkbook. Ray asks her to write a check for Sports Illustrated. And Debra questions why he would need to renew his subscription because they have it at work. And he says he wants one at the house. And she kind of thinks it's a bit wasteful. And they get into not so much of an argument, but still a lot of back and forth. And Ray tells her to just pay the bills. And he didn't mean it to come out like that, but I think he found that he was just digging a deeper and deeper hole. And that's ultimately what he came out with that led Debra to throw her hands up and tell him to pay the bills. If it's so easy, he can do it. And we don't actually get to see any of the early stages. We dive straight in with the problem. In the next scene, Ray is meeting Andy down at Nemo's, and it turns out they're shutting off the electric. And Ray doesn't know why this is. He sent the check in, and Andy figures out pretty quickly that it's because the check bounced. 14 checks bounced. And my initial question was, how on earth could that happen? And we do get a nice amount of suspense here. We find out that there's a problem, a little bit of suspense. Find out it's the electric, little bit of suspense. Find out the check bounced. And then we have a little bit more suspense until we find out that it's actually because Ray paid off the credit card in full. The logic makes sense. He didn't want to have the interest, so he paid it off in full, but then that meant that the account no longer had any money in it to pay the bills, and that's the account the checkbook is attached to, so that's why the checks bounced. And he's obviously panicking about this, but then he goes to bed that night, and Debra has just had her nails done for $20, and ordinarily I think Ray would not be bothered about this, but now he's I was going to say now he's balancing the checkbook, but that's too generous a statement. Now he is trying to sort out the finances. That $20 is something that he wishes was still in the account. And he shows Debra the checkbook to prove that he's been doing it right. And of course, she doesn't see any of the bounce checks. And Ray has actually got a fake checkbook to make it look like everything has gone well. And we do have a bit of a moment where Debra kind of seems a bit defeated almost because the checkbook, the family finances, it's something that's always stressed her out. I think that's absolutely fair. Managing finances, making sure the money's in the right place for the bills at the right time. It's not fun. And then here we have Ray, who seems to be doing it really casually and not complaining about it and just getting on with it. And I think she feels a little bit hurt by that. But obviously we know things are not that straightforward, and just as Ray is about to turn off the lamp, a split second before his fingers get to the switch, the lights go out, and we can assume then that the power was shut off. And we're then back in Nemo's with Robert this time, and Robert saw Ray leaving the house really early to get the money in the bank to get the power back on. And he asks Robert for a loan of money. And he won't tell Robert exactly why it is. So he kind of lets Robert believe, it was Robert's suggestion, but he lets Robert believe that it's because Debra has a credit card problem. She has a spending problem. And that's never a good thing to lie about. And the next thing we know, Frank and Marie are coming over with an envelope from Robert to give to Ray, and obviously they looked inside. They know there's a check for $3,000 in there. And Robert had also told them about Debra's quote-unquote problem. And in that moment, Debra's actually getting ready to take the kids out. And she asks Ray for some money because she needs to get something when she picks up Ali from dancing, I think. And of course, Marie and Frank are under the impression that she has a spending problem. So when Ray gives her a blank check, well, they're not exactly impressed with that. And Debra leaves with the kids. And then Ray runs out of the house because he has to get to the bank to deposit that check so Debra doesn't realise that there's no money in the bank. And we just have this moment that made me laugh so much because it took me a second to realise. But Marie and Frank are just standing in the kitchen It's not their house. Nobody else is there. Ray has left his parents alone in his house. And I find that to be very amusing. Ray then goes down to the ATM. Honestly, I didn't find the ATM scene to be that funny. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't think it was that entertaining. But having a change of scenery is always nice. And there's a woman in line ahead of him, so he tries to push his way to the front to get to the ATM, and then he starts trying to sort the check out, but then the woman has gone and got a police officer who, of course, is Robert, and then they're both trying to get the money into the ATM, and then the front of the ATM is coming down, they're clawing at it, and then Debra sees him through the window, and we cut to the penultimate scene, and it's actually really sweet. We have a couple of sweet moments here. Debra has realised what's been going on, at least to some extent. She's trying to balance the checkbooks and she just can't make it add up. And it turns out there was a third checkbook because Ray apparently accidentally wrote a check from the fake checkbook, so had to get a third checkbook to rectify the problem again. The point there is that this snowballed so rapidly for Raymond that he should have just been honest from the beginning. He never should have lied and things would have been better. But we do have a sweet moment where he tells Debra, I don't think he was really thinking about these words. It's not like he said this to try and win her back. I think he genuinely meant this because he'd been through this ordeal with the checkbook. And he said to her, I appreciate what you do. And Debra points out he'd never said that to her before. And I think that makes it all worthwhile. Because yes, sorting the finances is stressful, but if somebody tells you that they appreciate the effort you're putting in, it makes it so much better. then we have the final scene, and I'd forgotten that Marie and Frank thought Debra had a credit card problem, and they come into the house and Marie has allegedly got a new credit card in the mail, but she thinks it looks counterfeit. So she asks Debra if she can see her card so she can do a comparison, and Debra gets out her card and they take scissors and cut her card up and leave the house. And that's it. And I'm guessing that Debra didn't know about the lie that Ray let them believe about Debra's apparent spending habits. I believe she doesn't know about that. And this is how she found out. And then Ray just said the most adorable, I appreciate you, in the cutest, softest, most delicate way. And it was absolutely precious. So a really nice way to end things. I think it's a really great episode. A great lesson in not lying. And a lesson in admitting if things are too difficult and getting above you. And also realising that if you don't do the finances, it is difficult. It can be stressful. So maybe take a moment to thank the bill payer and the checkbook handler in your life. The Checkbook is a brilliant episode of Everybody Loves Raymond.